Thank you so much, Jeremy and Kathy. Such an amazing program. So anyone who wants to get involved or wants to raise their hand, please do so via the chat now, or you can go to anab2b.nyc and you can complete the form there. And again, that's anab2b.nyc right at the bottom of your screen to complete the form. Now on to our second to last session. It was not very long ago that the move towards globalism, an intertwined global economy to drive growth, reduce trading friction, create global supply chains, and leverage global marketing seemed unstoppable. But like so many old truths, there have been many developments that suggest a new truth may be emerging. Will we nationalize supply chains to prevent disruptions? Will trade wars persist? What does that mean for the global marketer? We have an extraordinary expert panel that will share context and truths new and old. Please welcome our moderator and a good friend of mine, Allison Knapp-Womack, CMO of Enterprise Community Partners and a longtime ANA NYC Board and Executive Committee member for Globalism Reimagined.
Thank you so much, Beth. It's just been so inspiring to see the resilience of the leaders, the collaboration, the ingenuity, the truth-telling, and just the genuine caring that's been, front and center in all the conversations today. And I would say this one is no different. Under the best of circumstances, managing global teams takes finesse, patience, flexibility with sleep schedules for sure. And marketing globally takes relentless curiosity and a willingness to understand local conditions and insights and rapidly respond to them. When you add the current social and political and economic turmoil on top of a global pandemic, the degree of difficulty increases exponentially. And that's really the focus of today's discussion. How are global leaders responding and leading every day? And are there opportunities among these incredible, formidable challenges? So we assembled a group of leaders and experts who between them, I think, touch just about every single part of the world. And I am pleased to introduce Jill Kress, VP of Growth Marketing at PayPal, Arnaud Frade, Chief Commercial Officer in APAC for Ipsos, and Maria Kachiris, Vice President and Program Leader, Cargill Global Transformation from Cargill. I'd like to kick us off and by first welcoming and thanking all of you for being here. And I'd like each of you to just tell us a little bit about the work you do, the geographies you manage, and if you'd like to share an anecdote about something you faced, a challenge, or even something that really puts a point on some of the issues we've been talking about as a global leader, we'd love to hear it. Jill, let's start with you.
Hi, I look after consumer marketing for PayPal across our core markets. And it's been a really interesting moment I joined a year ago. And so it's been an interesting moment to join a big global company while trying to build culture and connect with people around the world. I very much thrive in the world where I'm in the world, out in the markets where I lead people and lead teams and have those incredible moments of getting to know them and having those little hallway chats. So finding new ways to create those connections and kind of figuring out what those hacks are has been an interesting part of this journey. But in the end, I think, there are lots of ways to do that, and we're all human at the end of the day. And so just, probing a little bit deeper to find those points of human connection with the teams that we're managing around the world has been a big area of focus for us at PayPal.
Arnaud?
Thank you. Hi, Alison. So I'm based in Singapore, where I've lived for the past 14 years. I look after what we call our client organization, so our accounts. across the region, so across 14 markets in Asia Pacific. And I think the main aspect in this, especially in the current context, has been really to stay connected in countries where we have seen very different situations, very different pace of the crisis, in effect, unfolding, and making sure that there's different ways to connect across different entities and certainly different teams and different people, all experiencing things in their own very unique ways.
Maria.
I've always been really lucky that I've run global teams for a long time, but under COVID, it takes on a whole new meaning. I've always said, the good news is I have a global job. The bad news is I have a global job. Now it means more hours. My Asian team is up too late many nights. My American team is up very early to talk to the Asians very late at night. And we're all in different places. I mean, places like Singapore and China are in a much better place now, whereas the struggle in the Americas and in Europe is still very strong. So how do you make connections? How do you make sure people's families are safe, that they're calm, and getting over the fatigue of what's going on today?
No, and that's the softer connections of the business, as it were. Everybody's also running a business at the same time, and all of these things have manifested very differently across every business, every brand, every geography. So can you talk a little bit about the impact it's had on your business and your role? And I think, and explain, I think explaining Cargill's unique role in all this would be really helpful for the audience too.
So for those of you who don't know, one of the biggest private firms in the world, we are very proud that our mission is to nourish the world in a safe, responsible, and sustainable way. And that's never been more true as it is today, because consumers have never thought about supply chain and to understand supply chains. And we all know the story of going to the shelves and no toilet paper. That one's not mine. But if you have no chocolate, that might be partly our responsibility. Understanding how to adapt those global supply chains as consumers' preferences change. Think about how much we've gone back to the center aisles of the grocery store. Food service has fallen out of bed, no restaurants, people are baking more than ever. That requires a global supply chain behind it to pivot on a dime. And I think that's one of the most interesting things that we've all had to adapt to. How do we help our customers as a B2B supplier better manage what's going on with them and their consumer customers?
Well, and you're covering food, and Jill's got money. So can you talk a little bit about the money trend?
Yeah, absolutely. Helping people get that chocolate and toilet paper, connecting buyers and sellers. And, one of the things that has been at the heart of what's played out in COVID has been this massive shift to digital commerce. So we have been the fortunate recipient of incredible growth as a result of that momentum. And so what that has meant has been educating consumers who are new to digital commerce and how to shop online, and also working really hard to lean into our mission of the democratization of financial services and ensuring that we have the solutions to help more merchants get online and start to accepting payment, start being able to accept payments as a result of this incredible shift in COVID. And what's been really interesting from a global perspective has been to look at these trends around the world and look at how humans have really leaned into a spirit of human ingenuity in this moment to find new ways of getting those things that they need, that they want, and also incredible generosity that has played out on our platform, and people taking care of loved ones and reaching out to baristas that they miss. So it's really been a lot of looking at those trends and understanding what are the different need states of different types of merchants, small businesses around the world. What are the barriers that they have to connecting with their consumers at this moment? What are the things that consumers want? How do we help get more of those small businesses online to accept payments? And then lots of interesting trends that we talk about as far as what some of those payments are as well.
And the rate of change is fascinating. And Arnaud, you look across, you see a portfolio of all sorts of different brands in a lot of different categories. You also have the vantage point of not sitting in the US and not bringing an American perspective to this conversation. So tell us what you're seeing.
Well, I think there are several things. First is a change of pace. I used to talk about this idea of the speed of culture. Brands having to adapt to the changes in consumer behaviors through, for example, the impact of technology or social media. And I think what we're seeing in this crisis is really an accelerant. COVID-19 as an accelerant of many of the opportunities and challenges that were in many brands already. So that's the first aspect. The first aspect is a really very substantial shift in pace and having to adapt to very much a stop and go. Because I think what we've seen across most of the region is, yes, you're right, an improvement in some places. Singapore has no cases at the moment, for example, and life is, normal to an extent, with of course some restrictions and limitation. Having said that, things change quickly, and so that adaptation, I think, is one part. The second part is consumer behavior starting to evolve also. To be more focused on aspect of the integrity of the brands, and we're starting to see that come through some of the brand equity work we do. And so, again, making sure that companies are updating their insights, really not jumping into making decisions without really having thought about what they really know today, not what they knew 2 years ago, because a lot of that information and a lot of those insights are starting to become updated in a context of rapidly changing mindsets for consumers and rapidly changing decision behaviors also.
We see that. Can I build on that, Alison? I think that's really important about the changing adaptation. I mean, consumers are changing what they eat, where they go. Think about what's happened to restaurants and food service and your customers in that area and how they're buying. And so how do you adapt your insights? I mean, part of our job is to bring insights to our customers as well as consumers, and to do that in a changing world. And we're lucky that because many things have started in APAC since COVID started, to watch the trends there and apply them to Europe and the Americas is, I think, a critical opportunity for marketers and leaders in the Americas.
Yeah, I just to sort of add to that. Or no, I was going to share some of the shifting behaviors we've seen through the data and how people spend, incredible shifts in how people are being resilient. So as we look at growth in SKU level data, we've seen 180% increase in the need for, or the spend for household items to keep households safe, and how that plays out online. And then on the human ingenuity side of things, tremendous increases in things like personal beauty, right? So people trying to keep their hair on point at home, spend for things that help us take care of our pets, dog grooming supplies, and a huge lift in shopping for puzzles to keep us busy and to keep our mind going, and for arts and crafts, right? Just the struggle of what it means to keep kids busy and keep them occupied. So, significant double-digit growth. And so I think, the impact of, for us, understanding what are those needs around the world, what are consumers spending not only their money, but their time on to make their lives at home better, to keep their families busy, and how do we ensure that we can do that in a way that is seamless and allows them to, get those things that they need in some cases, but also that they want, that are little moments of joy and release in this crazy moment.
Arnaud, did you want to add
chocolate?
Yeah, no, just to and the chocolate, of course. Just to respond or to react to Maria's comment, I think it's very true in terms of understanding what's happening in Asia, but also bearing in mind that it's not always portable to some of the emerging or, in fact, reinforced value systems that we can also see in Europe or in America. And so I think that's also the challenge is not all behaviors are evolving at the same pace, and not all expectations are at the same pace also. And so I think that there is a real additional layer of complexity from a global marketing standpoint, and that's why I think we're also seeing the resurgence of a trend towards local. Quite a few companies are reorganizing themselves at the moment with a very strong local focus. And I personally, I see that as a very short-lived focus, most likely, because of course things are cycles, and it will come back to more regional and global points of view at a later stage. But for now, there is definitely a consolidation at the local level, which I think is an interesting evolution in the current context.
It will be interesting to see what survives and what doesn't survive. As trends? Are these going to be trends that are just specific to COVID, and people are going to go back to their buying patterns, their eating patterns, their patterns when it's over, or will they stick to some of these new trends?
Yeah, so we talk about macro forces when it comes to this, and the underlying micro forces are very constant. And I think you're absolutely right, Maria. Everything will be absolutely transformed. In fact, people are very much looking forward to traveling again, and there will be a lot of things that go back to just the way they were. But the subtlety and the challenge is going to be to pick the right insights that are actually going to be driving profound underlying changes, and that's of course the key task.
And those insights are varying, obviously, by local custom and culture, but also, as we were talking about, where the pandemic is at any given moment, because it's not experienced in the same way in every place. How are you all managing around that? Just that one place is maybe like Singapore, and then you have what we have here right now, which is a crisis. I mean, how does that change how you think about your markets?
I'll start. I think it's about understanding, first of all, where were the markets before the crisis happened? I mean, you look at something like in Argentina that had not come back yet, as well as Brazil had. They're in very different places. They lock down in different ways. The implications are different. There, it's about unemployment and the day economy, which we have less of in America, but still have, even though we don't talk about it, and the implications for people who don't, if you don't leave your home and you don't go out to work, you don't have any money, and what are the implications for your buying patterns? We're seeing it, there's a clear bifurcation between value buying and specialty buying, and even pushing out products. In Brazil, we've just pushed out a tomato paste product that costs R$1 for 300 milliliters. That's unheard of. And right now, that's something the market needs. So I think you're going to see even more market by market. What are the implications? How they came in, what's happening now, government regulation and the like, as well as the consumer buying patterns.
Let's pivot and talk a little bit about how you manage as a result of all this as leaders. How are you bringing, a sense of normalcy to the degree we can have one to your roles every day? And what has and hasn't changed there? Jill?
I think that leading with empathy is more important than ever. And it's also challenging because I think, we're all facing different types of challenges and struggles. But the reality of the fact that we're no longer working from home, we're living at work, and what that means is very different to our colleagues all around the world. And I think, to some of the different cultural trends and, what it means in the way of some of our colleagues who live in ways where they're connected to their family in very intimate ways normally, and taking care of extended family and loved ones, versus how we live in a place like the US where that's less relevant. And just really being sensitive to the fact that we don't know what's necessarily happening with our colleagues outside of work, what they're really suffering through, what they're facing, what their challenges are. So, really, I think, forcing ourselves and myself as a leader through sort of the chaos of the back to back video conferences to take a breath, to ask how our people are doing, to ask what they need from us. And then I think more than ever to really try to lead by example, not only with that empathy, but by leading with the things that we know our people need to do, like, taking walking meetings, talking about the time that I block on my calendar to ensure I can have dinner with my family or that I can get a workout in. I think that, with this constant screen time, people are getting reports as far as, how efficient they're being and how often, how long they're on Teams all day. And it's creating another added level of anxiety around the potential need to be present, which isn't the intention of that at all. And so I think it's leading by example to show that we have to take breaks, we have to take care of ourselves, we have to care about our employees as kind of whole selves, and be sensitive to the fact that there's a whole lot that's going on in their homes and in their lives that's separate to what they have to manage from a work standpoint.
Yeah,
Leonardo, I know you guys have
absolutely key. But I think the challenge is, there is a difference between the legislative and what people want to do. And that's been really the challenging bit, which is governments, of course, have taken various measures and various coercive or controlling measures, but people's reaction to those is very different. I think adjusting to that has been a challenge, because we've seen markets where the Philippines, for example, have been on the longest lockdown. And so, of course, it's starting to take a toll on people. Here in Singapore, incredibly well managed. But I've been working from home since March 18, and that's also something to adapting to the fact that you're with family members and at a different pace and all of these things. And we also see colleagues, for example, colleagues in Europe. I'm from Paris, I'm from France, and people in the summer talking about their holidays, whilst we are in the midst of a complete lockdown, and having to adapt to completely different pace, completely different experiences, both from the kind of the legislative environment of what has been decided in some countries, but actually, more importantly, in the way people see this crisis, which, as we can see in Europe and also in North America, is very, very different than certainly what people experience here in Singapore. For example, wearing a mask is just science. We just wear a mask. We'll use an app to log their entry into a building and to log their exit into a building. And these are things that we do routinely. But shift in pace and the complete difference in experiences is what is also quite startling, because, of course, we have to adapt to managing different experiences. If you're in Taiwan, for example, you've literally not experienced a day of work or real lockdown. There's been very little in kind of these disruptions. There have been other disruptions, but not so much in that aspect. So constantly having to adjust your own experience to the experience of others to make sure that indeed empathy was the priority.
I think there's one fun thing, if there's something fun to a silver lining to be found, is look at what we've learned about each other's family and loved ones. I mean, there is nothing more fun than seeing a child run on screen, sit in their parents' lap, wave to everybody on the team meeting, and then run away again. And at first the parent's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Or my mother came in and started talking. I'm like, Mom, say hello to everybody on the call. And she was horrified. Now it's normal and it's accepted. And I think it's made us all a little calmer about these kind of things and a little less hung up.
Yeah, I love that. And I think in the what's been some of the silver linings as a result of this, I think one of the things that I've really appreciated is breaking down the barriers of what I would call the proximity bias. And I've worked in global roles. I spent 4 years of my life living in Europe, so I really truly appreciate the fact that good ideas can come from anywhere, and that there is such value in diversity of thinking. Yet, when I'm in the office, I tend to gravitate towards who's closest. When we do creative, we work with agencies who are able to come into a meeting room and meet with us and bring the creatives in and sort of roll out the best work. And what we've really embraced is the fact that there are no meeting rooms. And I think I've really learned a lot about being aware of my proximity bias and being more inclusive. We just launched out a holiday campaign, and we had our team who worked on it from around the world in a much more intimate and collaborative way than I think they ever would have if I was sitting in New York with my direct reports who were in New York close to me and an agency who was close to me. We worked with an open source platform that leveraged creators from 46 creators from across 6 countries to bring our holiday campaign to life. So, I think that idea of what the reality of how we've connected both with our partners and as teams has been really refreshing. That's one of the things, like, I hope we remember that, right? I hope we don't fall back into this idea of proximity driving how and who we collaborate with. But that's been a real bonus and something that I've really enjoyed.
Great point.
Even how we talk to our customers. I mean, we did a
Yeah.
webinar with 300,000 Chinese farmers. Would have ever imagined before COVID 300,000
Amazing.
Chinese farmers on a webinar. A, we didn't break the system. B, it worked, and we were able to give important information to our customers to support them on a timely, broad scale manner. No one would have imagined that would work before.
Wow, it's amazing. And there's so much more we could cover, but we're unfortunately coming to the end of our time. I'd love to close though with the lightning round. Old rule, new rule, quickly from each of you. Jill, why don't you start?
Well, I'm looking longingly at all my high heel shoes sitting on the shelf, and I think they've got a long time to sit there. I wish I had bought more comfortable shoes at the start of the pandemic. That's been a big shift, and I think it's a long time before I hit the level of airline status that I've had in the past. But anyway, I think it's just it's going to be interesting to see how we move forward with a world of even still less travel and more comfortable shoes as we embrace the next chapter of this paradigm shift.
Arnaud?
Well, I think all marketing fundamentals, consumer understanding fundamentals, these have not changed, and so making sure that that's still really center focus is key. I think new rules, pace, and the amplification of pace. But I will also say not making too hasty decisions. I think to a point earlier, I think made by Maria, it's still evolving in terms of how consumers are behaving. And therefore, we're seeing companies starting to make very drastic decisions in terms of how they're organized, but also in terms of how their portfolio are being deployed. And I think that might be, in some cases, a little soon, based on the information that they have. So really pace, but with caution.
All right, Maria, you've got the last word.
I'll build on that. Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what sticks. And this holiday season is going to be a first great indicator. Lots of people change their buying habits at the holidays, be it Christmas, New Year's, Diwali, whatever it may be. Are consumers going to change their patterns? Are they going to buy up during the holidays? Are they going to stick with value brands? And then are they going to stick with them long term? That will be one that I think. There's a new phrase at Cargill since this started that says, "How are you doing, really?" And I hope that never changes.
Great way to close it. Thanks, all of you, for your ideas and just sharing so much accumulated wisdom with all of us as we all get through this together. So with that, I'd like to pass the baton back to my good friend Tom Stein, who is going to introduce the final session.